Welcome to The Human Element, presented by Whisk. I'm your host, Barb Biden, and in each episode, I sit down with CHROs and senior HR leaders to explore how AI, innovation, and human insight are reshaping the future of HR. We'll explore how technology is reshaping leadership, strategy, and the role of HR by sharing candid stories, practical ideas, and strategic perspectives to help you shape the future. The Human Element is brought to you by Whisk, the leader in agentic HR and creator of Harper, the world's first AI HR generalist. Learn how Harper can resolve up to 80% of routine HR tasks autonomously. Learn more about Whisk at whisk.com. Welcome to The Human Element. Today, my guest is Fred Skinner, and Fred is the CHRO at Eversana, where he leads people strategy across a life science commercialization services company. Fred is focused on culture, talent, leadership, and organizational effectiveness. And I'm excited, Fred, to talk with someone leading HR at a company that's helping life sciences organizations bring their therapies to market and then also scale their commercial teams. I think you're going to be able to share a perspective that we have not yet had on the show. So I am super excited for that. So thanks for making time to chat today.
Yeah, my pleasure. I hope I don't disappoint. I'll try to live up to the hype.
No, I am sure you will not. So I think one of the unique perspectives that you probably bring compared to some of the prior guests that I've had on is that the environment you work in is highly regulated, right? So in a high growth, highly regulated space, how have you started to define your AI for HR strategy at Eversana?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I don't think it varies that much from probably other industries and other folks that you've talked to. In its most simple form, how we look at the AI strategy for human resources or people strategies is we're here to enable the business. So if we can do that in a more effective way that helps to create scale and efficiencies, we're all in for it. The benefit that we have in this highly regulated industry is that all the rigor that's put into being regulated in that industry that we have from clients or regulatory bodies, we do that to ourselves as well. So it's just the name of the game in this company because we have our own compliance organization that does their audits against us, and we have to meet the same criteria that we do for our clients. So I guess it's a good thing and a hard thing sometimes as well.
Yeah, I was talking to an earlier guest about some of the foundational issues that we're experiencing, like lack of documentation in certain companies that would allow for better AI adoption to feed the right core information into systems to help them work for us. I'm guessing that's some of the stuff that you probably have in much better order than some other companies that maybe are a little more lax on that stuff.
You'd be surprised. I think, yes, but we've spent a lot of effort really just cleaning our own house. So I would say over the last 2 years before ChatGPT and that became a bigger thing, we just realized, hey, we've been very acquisitive in our history and from all over the globe. So we've inherited a lot of tech debt and just data messes and processes and all of those things. So we spent, the better part of a year and a half, 2 years, really just cleaning our own house. We called it Project-Windex, which wasn't really a global name, but it was really about adding clarity and cleaning to our own data, our own processes. And all of that work really, I think, is fundamental. It's just table stakes to what you need to do before you get into some of the deep AI things. And spoiler alert to anybody listening, we're not as far advanced as probably some are. I think we're still a novice in the space, but we're diving in and starting to see some benefits from the work that.
Cool. So maybe talking about some of the places you're diving in, what are maybe a couple of core use cases that you have thought about prioritizing first, and why did you start with those?
Yeah. So there's probably two, I would say, areas that we've focused on thus far, and then there's a whole laundry list of things that we need to do and where we're going. The two first would just be automating like our internal processes and looking at where is there opportunity. So if you look at all the things you do within the spectrum of HR, there are things that are probably more advantageous and more apt to being addressed within using agentic models or whatever you want to, use. Pinpointing those things, we started to identify those. And there's simple things too. There's even simple things of like, how do you capture notes and then how do you thematically look at those notes and then have takeaways? Like those are the
Hmm.
simple things that you can just start doing that we've done and I've seen a lot of benefit from it. And then I think the most logical place for at least us to start, and I think a lot of folks in HR, is talent acquisition. So we've done most of our work in the AI space around talent acquisition, and that we have processes in place now where we'll take, and this will happen automatically, but we'll take a job description for a specific area in a specific business unit with specific leaders. And based on that, the AI model will take, here's the key criteria that we're looking for. It will generate templated, but very pinpointed intro of the organization that ties it to that specific role so that candidates can look at that. And then we also have interviewing processes that happen through AI that are videos that come back to us and it already calls out like the strength of candidates that we have that then move into the next phase of the interview process, which removes bias and does all that stuff. But that alone has created so much scale in our talent acquisition team that it just makes it more effective and you can do a lot more with a lot more power behind what you're doing.
And it's funny that to me that you say you're not that far along, but I feel like what you've done thematically that feels similar to the leaders who are just getting going is this whole idea of choose a workflow or a couple of workflows, choose your places where you know you can have an impact, have a use case there, get it going, reap the benefits, and go from there. And starting with internal processes and TA definitely are two of those key spots that have been coming up over and over again with leaders as just no-brainer. Start
Yeah,
there.
they're the easiest also. I'm
Yeah.
not saying they are easy to do, but
No.
they're easiest to start with, right? Because you
Yeah.
already know where you're strong and where your weaknesses are as an
Hmm.
organization typically, or you can
Hmm.
assess that pretty easily. And then you can
Hmm.
just determine, okay, what can we automate related to that or add effectiveness to? And then talent acquisition is just ready, it's primed, and the most tools are out there now for AI automation.
Totally. So I know you have an IO psychology background, and I'm a little curious about how that comes to bear in your current circumstance with Eversana's work in healthcare. How are you thinking about things like governance in HRAI? So stuff like bias testing, explainability, audit trails, like the kinds of stuff that would fall in that category.
Yeah. It's a great question. I also would say that, yes, I have an IO background that I haven't used in a long time, unfortunately, ever since I took a chief HR role. So I'm envious of the people on my teams that get to do the stuff that I used to get to do that is super fun.
You mean we don't get to pull out our IO textbooks and our
Right.
CHRO roles and just go by the book, right?
Here's
We
where
got
I'm
to
going to
like
use
figure
it.
it out. All the humans
Exactly.
doing human
So
stuff.
I wish that was
Yeah.
the case. Still, that comes along for the ride in everything that we do. And what I would say, the simple things that we've set up is going back to that idea of cleaning your own house. We set up our own governance, global governance org to regularly look at all the things that we do to make sure that not only we're compliant, but what's the audit trails that we have. Again, we had our internal audit of HR, which is always super fun, but we learned a lot from it. So we're really in a good place. And that, I think, regardless of AI, I would say if you start to get your arms around just the compliance and regulatory elements of your own just HR and business that you have, then it will just fold into those things. So I would say the other piece that I would say is as it relates to a lot of the tools, whomever you're partnering with, most of them, that's a big pitch that they have. Like I'll take the talent acquisition space. The partners that we have, they really pride themselves on the reporting that they can do, adverse impact, all of those elements that we obviously are going to look for. So we talk about that in the negotiations of just the contract and setting it up, but then we actually use that and tie it to all the workforce analytics that we run just as an HR practice.
I love that. And you're right. The vendors do have all kinds of great information that even is great learning, right? To even start for someone who's further near the beginning of their journey, you can learn a lot from your vendors in terms of what to be looking for, in terms of avoiding bias and those sorts of things. So I want to go back to TA, which is, as I said that, it's funny. I led TA for a part of my career, and I've thought like it'd be fun to go back to TA now with AI. I know that's one of your key areas where you've AI. And I'm curious when it comes to some of the higher volume tasks like sourcing, screening, any sort of predictive hiring, or even on the analytics side of hiring, like workforce planning, what sort of tools and planning models are you starting to think about in that space to help handle some of the volume and scale you deal with?
Yeah, I think that's actually what we've seen the most benefit from right now. So we use, if I can name out tools that
Yeah,
we
you can.
use,
Yep.
we use SmartRecruiters as our applicant tracking system, which has had a lot of advancements in their AI modeling, which has been beneficial. Again, the big idea is you cast that net and like, how do you narrow it down really quickly with validity, right?
Mhm.
And I think we're able to do that using both SmartRecruiters tools that we have, the internals tools that we have, where we'll capture things. We'll look at interviews and other sentiment. I know we'll talk about that probably later about engagement and surveys and things like that.
Mhm.
But like Gemini or Copilot, I would Copilot in my mind is a little bit lagging in comparison to Gemini. But so we use those tools to narrow down and do it as fast as possible. And we've seen a lot of benefit, like thousands of hours actually saved. So we hire
Mhm.
approximately, I would say, give or take 3,000 people in a given year. It's
Mhm.
a decent amount of volume that we see. And those hours, we've just implemented this probably mid-year of 2025. So in that 5-month time frame, already breaching the thousand mark of hours saved of just combing through searching and validating who goes to the next round. And then the big metric that we would look at also would be, has the quality of hire shifted from, the hiring manager's perspective and just from a pure delivery perspective, depending on
Mhm.
whatever the role is. And that shift really hasn't gone, I believe, I'll have to check, but hasn't gone north or south. It's where it is. My prediction would be as we start to get better at using this tool, that the quality of hire will continue to increase as well. And then we'll look at longevity of those hires in the process, which will be another indicator of how well we're doing. But just from a productivity perspective, we've
Yeah.
saved so much and not lost any quality.
Well, and thank you for sharing that and also for being open about the fact that, like, knowing that quality of hire is not going in a backwards direction is fine when you have these huge productivity uplifts, right, from this, and
100%.
feeling like you can get after quality of hire as the next thing to focus on now that you've gotten all this time back in your team's day to be able to think that through. It's super smart, right? And we can't solve all of the problems with one tool like immediately, but we have to start somewhere. And I think that having that time back is one of the things that will help our teams to think through some of these more complex problems, like how do we really elevate our quality of hire?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be tricky to measure that in general. In my organization, it's really diverse. It's the most complicated organization that I've ever worked at because you have hourly folks that, are probably high turnover that are going to be higher volume to people that have 4 PhDs and there's 4 people in the world that can do that job. So to figure out like how to enable support tools like AI to deal with that whole environment is
Mm.
relatively tricky and it's been successful. So I'll take it if it doesn't go
Yeah.
down. Like quality of hire, if it stays, that's a win. It's a big win.
Totally. And we are going to talk about team member experience, but on the candidate experience side, with all that pace picking up, are you hearing anything in terms of how it's impacting your candidate experience?
Yeah, so I would say it impacts on two fronts. One would be that the pace at which a qualified candidate can get through has increased. So that's a good thing. And then also the experience that a candidate gets of really understanding how their role fits into the organization. You know how this is. It's been a while since I've looked for another job or had a start at another job, but it's usually just a pool of ambiguity. You have no idea how it's structured. You look it up on Wikipedia or use ChatGPT now and say, how is it structured? Where's this fit in?
Mhm.
You don't know until 6 months in really how the cogs fit together. This helps break down that barrier because it's really tailoring for the role what you're going to do and where you fit in the organization. And you don't have to spend hours tailoring that to every single candidate that's applying, which is a beautiful thing. So it gives a lot more clarity. And then the trade-off, I would say, is that it can be seen as less personal on the front end, especially this video stuff that we do. Some people really like that because I think you can do it a couple of times, submit it, and you're good to go. Other people want the interaction and face to face before having to go through that hurdle of video. And that's not for
Mhm.
every role, obviously, but that's some of the trade offs that you can get from this is a less personalized view, but you're getting a lot more clarity and a lot more pace.
Yeah, 100%. So, shifting over more to the broader view on engagement towards team members and elevating your employee experience, what tools are you using to read things like sentiment within the organization, retention risk, to be more personalized in things like learning, career planning, that sort of thing? And what signals are you getting from the tools that you're using?
Yeah, and this is what I would say. This is probably an area where we're less advanced. We're doing the basic things that you could imagine. Like before, I remember the days when I was first starting out. It's a long time ago. I feel really old when I say this stuff. But you'd go through that, you'd create some kind of access database, and then you would look at the themes and figure out like how to do it. And it would be hours and hours or days upon days of work. And the shift that we have now is that we can dump that all into Gemini is probably the one that we use most. ChatGPT, or not ChatGPT, but Copilot was the first iteration, and we have a partnership now with Google. So we can put it into those models and start to just get better insights, and we can get it way, way faster. And that's the tip of the iceberg and really where we've started. What we've seen is that we can pinpoint things a lot easier. And this goes back to the good data and cleanup that we did a while ago. Now you can start to connect that with your data to say, okay, in this area, this management team or this business unit or this region, you can start to really accurately define where you want to focus and on what you want to focus. And you can do that just faster than you ever been able to do it before. And there's so much value in that because you can just get ahead of so many things. So I'd say
Mhm.
that's where we've gone thus far. There is so much more to do in this space. And we'll get into how we tie when we start to talk about like workforce planning, not only externally, but internally. I'd like to get to a place where we can predict at a better rate retention loss and things like that. And then how do we develop those skills, retain those employees, comp and outside of comp? And I think we could do that all in a model that would just click of a button, here's our biggest risks, and here's recommendations on what we can do to address those risks. What a great place that will be. So that's where we'll go. We'll get there. I just
Yeah.
don't know how or when yet.
I like it. The way you're thinking about it, don't sleep on these efficiency metrics because the places where we can just move faster, it is going to help us. It's like with all of this data that we're talking about, right? Like sentiment from surveys or performance reviews and that sort of thing, right? We didn't used to be able to move as fast with this stuff to actually understand what was happening in the data. When we can move faster, we can intervene faster,
Totally.
right? So it's, yes, we want all of these sort of second order things like improved quality of hire, but don't sleep on the efficiency metrics. If you can just get more efficient, the
The,
things you're going to be able to chase after that are like going to be super exciting, I
the
think.
value is in the insight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it used to
Yeah.
be valuable to be able to find the right insight. Now it's valuable to get to the insight fast and to trust that insight. You still have to pressure test it, but that's where the value is because then you can, to your point, you can act on it.
So we talk a lot with, especially companies at scale, about piloting and how to get some of these solutions in place in their teams and how to get their teams through change and that sort of thing. What change management moves has your team tried that has most accelerated the adoption of any of
Yeah.
the solutions that you're trying?
Like I said, we still have a long way to go, but here's what I found just in general with these type of tools because we have a big push in the organization throughout the organization to move in this more digital AI centric way, and we're making a lot of progress in it. So I'll speak to it at a high level of The biggest challenge that I've found is that you hear forums like this and you're like, okay, that sounds great. And then it's okay, how do I actually do that? So the quicker you can get into at least like trying things out, figuring out what's working, and then move on to the next, but then capturing that and then explaining it. Like that's the biggest thing because people just get stalled in this thing of, I would love to do that. I don't even know where to start or how to make that happen. And it's just that little piece of, okay, here's the tool that you can have. Here's click on this and this. Here's the right prompt to do, and you'll be blown away. And then that'll get people hooked, and then they'll start using it. And then you're going to have to just be careful and be like, hey, man, you're using it for the wrong thing, or don't do
Mhm.
that. Or you're going to have a different problem to solve. But the adoption piece is just how do you teach people how to get into it? And that's the hardest thing.
Yeah, it's making the tools more accessible and a little less daunting. So, is there anything that you're doing there besides? Is it just having good sort of work instructions or training, or is there any magic there to,
Yeah, so we
yeah.
do, and it varies. I'll say in HR, what we've done is we had awesome, really talented talent acquisition team, the entire team. They're amazing. And they just grabbed onto it. You had a couple people that were interested and they heard about this or they saw this and then they started using it and then the whole team adopted it and they saw the benefit in it. So it was very organic and there was a low lift on like having to push it. Other parts of the organization, we've had to do exactly what you're talking about, create work instructions. We have like regular cadence of, I forget what we call them, but they're like learning AI or something like that across the business. It's
Mhm.
something way more clever than that, but that's essentially what it is. Here's new tips and tricks, or better yet, here's proof points. We did this and this is how we did it. And then here's the result that we found from it. And we've done a lot of that, especially in certain service lines or business units that we have across the company, especially in our agency business. We have a real shift in the agency business to move to an AI agency focus and seen a lot of gain and we'll continue to see gain there. But it's just your basic change management. How do you explain it? How do you communicate it? How do you reinforce it? And how do you keep on rinse and repeating and doing the same thing?
Totally. So every single time I get to this place of the conversation, I am left with more questions, but I'm going to switch us to our lightning round anyway,
Perfect.
because I can't believe that this has gone by so quickly. So these are just the quick hit questions. What is one misconception that HR leaders have about AI adoption?
I think misconception in general is that AI is going to take your job. And the thing that I keep on hearing is, yeah, it will take your job if you don't start adopting it and figuring it out. So you need to help enable that and use it, see it as another resource. I love getting help from anybody. And if I have now a tool that can help me, I'm going to do that. I'm going to use that. So it will change what we're doing and it already has and it will continue to do. But the more knowledge that you have around it and really leaning in, like that's your next, it's not the next like leadership model that you need to be learning about. It's the next AI innovation that is coming out that you need to learn.
Totally. And when you're doing that, make yourself known as a user of AI.
Totally.
Don't try to hide it. It's not a cheat code. I've said that 100 times so far in the episodes. Like we want team members talking about the great ways that they're leveraging AI to improve their work for sure.
Yeah, brag about it because
Yeah.
it's a
I
big
mean,
deal. Hey, this used to take me 4 hours. Now I did that in 30 seconds. Take a
that's a
look.
shift that's happened though in the last 12 months. I feel like 12 months ago when everyone was still like, "Oh, I don't know, we got to be careful about how we implement AI." And then it was like, "Oh my gosh, like we have to do this." And then the rush really started that shift right around, "Oh, if I'm using AI, I've got to do it under cover of darkness," which we don't want employees doing. We want you using sanctioned enterprise tools that we're putting at your disposal. We want you experimenting, learning, and talking about it and sharing your successes for sure. So next quick hit, what is one metric that you trust most when judging an AI pilot or an AI tool's success?
Yeah, right now I'm going to say one, but it's two. I'm going to say two, but it's one. That's what I meant to say. It's productivity and quality. If I can look at the productivity gain that we get and it's still valid and has the quality that we need, it's a success. And I'll know it very clearly from there. And then there's going to be a ton of metrics that come after that. After you start to, those are just, again, the table stake ones that I would look at, but that's going to prove it out right away.
Awesome. This is a question we call keep one and drop the rest. So, what would you choose between platform consolidation or having best in breed point solutions, AI bots where needed, and why?
Yeah, I would go with probably the consolidation, and it's probably more so because of the business that I have and the
Mhm.
consistency that I need versus I see the bots being they're very mostly going to be single focus. I'm going to solve this one thing versus a consolidated view. I can get everything all in one spot and I can still focus on the rigor and the compliance and everything that I need to focus on when I have that all in one.
Got it. So I have a hard job where I try to capture just a few takeaways to leave people with. It was hard to get to just a few, but we started with Project-Windex. I love the name. I think it's catchy, right? It's get your own house in order first. I think that's great advice, something you did early on, but something that others can really benefit from. The more your own house is in order as an HR team, the more you can succeed with AI adoption. Because you're in a regulated industry, I loved the second thing was talking a little bit about governance, right? The setting standards and having folks internally who set the standards for your organization. But I also liked how you brought vendors into the mix in that, right? Bringing vendors in to make sure that you're understanding your vendors' capabilities in order, like their capabilities that can help you uphold those standards that you have for your organization around bias and so forth. So responsible use of the AI tools that you have in place. And then the third one was I have take the win and build on it, right? So we talked about that moving the efficiency metric and how the quality metric just stayed the same. And that's okay, right? Take the win. A huge move on efficiency is a step in the right direction, and you can get the second metric later. And I'm going to add a fourth one too. When it comes to change, this is really just about basic change management. So to facilitate change and adoption, it's the classic, right? Explain, communicate, and reinforce, and rinse and repeat and rinse and repeat
I think you
until we
nailed
are
it.
changed.
What are you talking about? I
So
think you nailed all of them. Nice job.
that is great. I pay close attention. I have learned so much from guests hosting this podcast. I'm going to leave you with the last word, Fred, here. What is one piece of advice for HR leaders that are just starting out their AI journey?
Yeah, it's really simple. Just try it. Like I look at everything is a grand experiment, right? Even this stuff is just an experiment. So just try it. Do some research. If you have a tool, hopefully it's protected within your own firewalls, but just try something out and measure it and see if it's working. And then I promise you, you'll just start to gain momentum and it'll become easier and easier. So don't be afraid to try it, lean into it, and you're going to see some awesome results that you couldn't have anticipated.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
It was a pleasure. It was awesome. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for joining us on The Human Element, presented by Whisk. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow The Human Element wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Barb Biden. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.